Hi everybody! This is part 9 of this doll's house renovation, and when I started this video I wasn't quite sure which part of the doll's house I was going to be working on. So I'm at the stage with this doll's house makeover where I have a long list of things to do, and I can't do one thing without completing another thing. So I was going to start making the mezzanine level, which is going to sit about here in the doll's house. And to do this, I already had cut out one piece of wood, but I needed a second one because I want to do a similar setup with lighting like I have done on the floor below. So I needed two pieces so that I could put the lights and the battery pack in between them. But whilst I was cutting this out, I realised that I couldn't really go any further because I couldn't attach this mezzanine without completing the floor of the level below. And this is because the floor on the level below is going to have a bookcase on it, and it's going to be the bookcase that will hold up the mezzanine floor. So once I'd finished cutting out this piece of wood, I painted it and then I put it to one side because I decided that this week it was time to start working on the flooring for the level below. So this video is going to show you 3 days worth of work because it took quite a long time making the flooring. I decided to make some parquet flooring in a herringbone pattern, and it's something that I'd never done before, and I haven't watched any videos on how anyone else has ever done it before, but I thought that I would just have a go and see how it went. So I started by working out my measurements. I looked online to see what parquet flooring sizes in real life normally are, and there is some variation, but I then took the measurements that I found online and converted them so that they were 12th scale. I cut out a strip of card in the width of the planks for the parquet flooring, and then I use this as a template to draw onto wood. You might notice that this wood I've already trimmed to size, so this is to fit onto the piece of foam board that I've already cut out, and that was in a previous video, but I haven't actually got enough wood to fit the entire floor, so I have to use a couple of pieces of wood and then join them together. So once I'd drawn the pattern in one direction, I just used a piece of card to make sure that I was getting a right angle, and then I drew my blanks in the, I was going to say opposite direction, it's not the opposite direction, but at a 90-degree angle to the ones that I'd already drawn. In hindsight, I wish that I'd used a piece of card that was thicker for my template and longer too, because I ended up having to go back and draw all of the lines again with my ruler because my piece of card was too short to fit across the entire piece of wood. Now in this video I am going to be using sharp tools, so as I always say in my videos, please do not copy me because I don't know the safest ways to do things. This is just a diary entry, it's not a tutorial, so please don't copy any of my methods or techniques. So after drawing all of these planks onto this piece of wood, I was left with sort of a grid pattern, and I worked out that 4 squares on this grid represented 1 plank of parquet flooring. So I used a craft knife to score around each 4 squares on the grid. I actually found this quite hard to do because I was finding it difficult to see where I'd already put my score lines. I could see the pencil lines really clearly, but it was just really hard to see where I'd already scored. So I kept having to kind of feel the wood to see where the score marks had been made already. So I went quite slowly to try and make sure that I didn't make any mistakes. I did make 1 or 2 mistakes, but never mind. And I also was taking great care, obviously, because I didn't want to cut myself. As I went on, I got more used to the pattern, and I sort of found some methods to help me to work out where I'd already made the score marks. So as you can see, I was going along down each row or each column. I didn't use a ruler when I was doing this, but I wanted to make the flooring look quite rustic and like it was reclaimed parquet flooring, and I wanted to also make each plank look like it was individual. So I'd worked into the night. So on day 2 I continued. Now in the evening the night before I had drawn from the template onto the second piece of wood, but as you can see here I'd actually gone a little out of line. So when I joined these two pieces of wood together, the flooring wouldn't quite sit at the correct angle. So that meant that I needed to rub all of these lines out and start again. Once I'd rubbed them out, I redrew them on, so now as you can see, they are all lined up with the piece that I'd already scored. But I now wanted to actually cut some of each piece of wood out because I didn't want the straight join down the middle. I decided to cut in a zigzag pattern so that none of the herringbone flooring was sliced off, so that each plank of 4 squares wasn't overlapping between sheets of wood. It's really hard to explain. Basically, each little miniature plank of parquet flooring is complete, so it doesn't join over onto the next piece of wood. Unfortunately, when I'd cut out this piece, I realised that the lines on the other piece of wood that I'd already rubbed out and redone were still not in line. So I rubbed them out and I drew them for a third time. So I taped the piece of wood that I'd already scored down to this second piece of wood, and I used the zigzag of the first piece of wood as a template. I think that this is why it took me 3 days to complete this parquet flooring, because I made several mistakes along the way, but never mind. If you've made miniature parquet flooring for your doll's house, I would love to hear how you've done it. I had considered using little coffee stirrers and slicing them up and then laying each piece down like a plank of wood, but I didn't have any of them, so I decided to try this technique instead. Just a little reminder, please don't copy me because I am very clumsy and I'm using sharp tools, so I am not giving any advice on how to use them because I'm not an expert. So please don't copy this as a tutorial. So altogether I actually needed 3 pieces of wood to fill the entire floor. So before going any further, I laid these pieces into the doll's house just to check their size and make sure that they sat nice and neatly, and I trimmed some edges off just to make sure that they joined really nicely. And I didn't know at this point whether cutting this zigzag would make the flooring look better or if it would have been better to leave it as just a straight edge, but I was hoping that this zigzag would help to hide the join. So this was my third time drawing the pattern onto this second piece of wood, and this time I knew that it was all aligned and I used the original piece of wood to make sure that the lines connected. This all took a very long time, but I thought it was worth taking the time to do it well. I then repeated the steps that I'd used for the first piece of wood, making score marks around each 4 squares. It was time to start working on the third piece of wood that would sit on the left hand side of the floor, and I used the foam board that I'd already cut to size just to make sure that I was cutting my third piece of wood the right shape and size. At this point, I was a little worried about the joins between the three pieces of wood because obviously they were very noticeable at this stage. Once I'd finished scoring around each plank, it was time to rub out all of the pencil lines, and at this point I could really see the pattern emerging. I did make a tiny mistake here, but never mind. I then decided to go back and make the groove between each miniature plank of parquet flooring a little bit deeper. I was hoping that by doing this it would help to disguise the gap between the pieces of wood where they're all joining on the zigzag line. So I wasn't sure at this point if it would work, but everything was an experiment and I was just hoping that it would look good at the end. I actually really enjoyed this stage because it was helping to make each little miniature piece of parquet flooring look individual. Once I'd finished doing this, I placed it all into the doll's house just to make sure that it did still fit. And I did have to just trim the edge down slightly, and I made a couple of little alterations on the zigzag lines where the pieces of flooring were connecting. Once I was happy with the size and shape of each piece of wood, I added some PVA glue to the foam board, ready to stick each piece of wood down. I then placed some heavy objects on top because I didn't want the wood to warp whilst it was soaking up the PVA glue. And I also was hoping that the join between each piece of wood would become a little bit flatter so that it wasn't quite as noticeable. Whilst that was drying, I then started to make a little structure that would go underneath the floor to make sure that it sat nice and level. So I have lots of pieces of wood that I've kept from previous projects, and I decided to use these. They were just slightly taller than the battery pack, which was helpful because it meant that the flooring would sit just above the battery pack and the lights that I'd installed in a previous video. And it also meant that I could put some of the wood around the battery pack, which would stop it from slipping backwards, because I still need to be able to access it if I need to change the batteries or if I want to turn the lights on or off. I left everything to dry overnight, and then on day 3, my first job was to make some bread, which doesn't relate to the doll's house at all, but I just thought I'd let you know that I started my day with making some bread in the bread machine because I'm not a very good baker. I found my bread machine in a charity shop and I love it. It's so good. It makes bread so nicely, much better than I'd be able to do without it. So yeah, a lovely loaf of bread. Then it was actually time to start working on my doll's house again, so I needed to go down to my garage to get some materials, and it was a very, very cold day, so it was really icy outside, and it was a really beautiful day as well, a really nice crisp winter's day. I'd gone to the garage to get some Danish oil, which I actually use on my worktops in my kitchen, in my full-size kitchen. And I decided to try and use this to stain the wood of the parquet flooring. So I removed all of the heavy items from the flooring and had a look at how it had dried. And unfortunately some of the glue had oozed out from between this join and also the other join as well. So I tried to rub it off because I thought that if I used the oil over the top of this, it would probably be really, really noticeable. Thankfully it was rubbing away, and I then used some sandpaper. I tested it on a little piece of wood first just to check that it wasn't too abrasive, and then I sanded away the remaining glue. I did then decide to sand over all of the flooring, just in case the sandpaper had left any marks where the glue was. I wanted to make sure that the texture was consistent across the entire piece of flooring. Some of the sawdust from sanding had gone into some of the grooves, so I just went back and just removed it with the craft knife and the brad awl. And I also decided to put a few more deeper grooves into this flooring just to take the tension away from the joins between the 3 main pieces of wood. So this is one of the main joins, but then I've added some grooves that look just as deep in other places, just so that those main joins don't stand out quite so much. And I gave it one last sand down. And then it was time to start applying the Danish oil, and I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. First of all, I found it really hard to get the lid off. And then once I'd got the lid off, I actually didn't have any cotton that I was meant to use to apply the oil. So instead I was going to use a piece of kitchen roll. So I dipped upside down and wondered why nothing had come out, and then realised that this was completely unused and that I hadn't even removed this little plastic piece yet, which confused me because I thought that I had used this already on my worktop in my kitchen. So I removed that piece of plastic and then tried again. I practiced on a piece of leftover wood first, and I was surprised because I didn't expect the colour to come out like this. So I thought this was the oil that I used on my worktops previously in my kitchen, but this seems really, really orangey. Anyway, I had a look back at my footage from earlier in this video, and I noticed that behind the tin that I took out from my garage was the one that I've used in my kitchen, and I've obviously bought this other tin at some point and never opened it, and I am now wondering if I bought the wrong colour and if that's why it's not open, because I didn't expect it to be this orange in colour. But anyway, I thought I'd apply it and see how it went. Now, I haven't got any video footage of it, but whilst I was doing this, I accidentally knocked over the bottle of oil and it went all over my table and it dripped onto my bench next to my table. At first, I thought, oh no, I ruined my bench and my table. And then as I was wiping it off the table, realised that it seemed to be covering some of the scratches that are on my table that I've spoken about in previous videos. So I'm going to go back at some point with this oil on my full-size dining room table and just see if it might disguise some of the scratches that I have in my table. And thankfully not much went on the bench, and I need to reupholster the bench anyway. So I was very lucky that it didn't go on the carpet, it didn't go on my cream chair, and it didn't go on my doll's house, and it didn't go on me. But I need to learn to put the lids on things whilst I'm working. So you'll notice there that I also used a paintbrush just to put some of the oil in between the grooves of each plank of parquet flooring, and I think this made a big difference. Once I'd placed the flooring down, I was really happy with it, but I just wanted to check that the door still shut, and it did. It fit perfectly, and it was now time to let it dry because I actually hadn't waited for it to dry before I put it into the doll's house. I do still need to add a piece of wood at the front here, so I'll do that in a future video, and I obviously need to finish the flooring in the art gallery space below. The only reason that I've not done this yet is because I don't have any of the correct colour paint at the moment, so I need to go and buy some, but that should be a quick job once I do it. So now that the flooring is in place, I intend to put a bookcase somewhere around here, but this is one that came out of this doll's house when I first bought it, and I collected these little wooden boxes, I've got 2 of them, from a doll's house fair. I think I'm going to make my own bookshelves out of those wooden boxes, and then I'm going to use them to hold the mezzanine floor up if they're the right height. I do need to do some measuring and just work this out properly. So that's what I intend to do in one of my future videos. The piece of wood that I'm holding here is the one that I was cutting out at the beginning of the video, and I did paint it and added some little holes as well where I can put the light fittings in. Although as I'm watching this back, I am now thinking that those light fittings might not be in the correct place because I didn't think about the fact that this bookshelf would be sitting here, so they might not be quite central. I'll have to have a think about that, but I will do it in a future video. So this is how my doll's house is looking. Thank you so much for watching. I am going to leave you with a couple of pictures with little miniature items next to the flooring so that you can see the scale. Obviously this little sweeping brush is from my Tudor doll's house, so I won't be leaving this in this doll's house. This grandfather clock is one that came with this doll's house, and this wardrobe too, so I'm really looking forward to making the rest of the things for this doll's house. And if you're new, thank you so much for watching for the first time, and please do remember to subscribe, and thank you to everybody who comes back each week to watch my videos. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.